Last year alone, Avista customers saved over 53 million kilowatt hours of energy. How? By caulking their windows, programming their thermostats, replacing their incandescent light bulbs with LEDs. Simple things, really. But the energy they saved was enough to power more than 4,000 homes for an entire year. Way to save, everyone. Way to save. Find your way to save at avistautilities.com.
Welcome to Startup Spokane, where host Steve Traben explores the excitement and momentum growing throughout Spokane's expanding startup community. Startup Spokane is a joint effort between Greater Spokane Incorporated's Startup Spokane and Spokane Talks Online. Now, here's your host, Steve Traben.
Welcome to Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Online, your podcast home for everything startup and entrepreneurship related in the Spokane region. I'm your host today, Steve Traben, and as you know, Startup Spokane is a program of Greater Spokane Incorporated, and we're here to provide you with our region's story of entrepreneurship and educate you about the resources that exist in our region's ecosystem. We want to share ways for you to plug in and connect to those resources so that if you are launching or growing a business, you have what you need to be successful. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Tom Simpson to talk about funding and access to capital in the Spokane region. Tom, you don't really need an introduction, but take a minute and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, thanks, Steve. It's a delight to be here. And as you know, I have a passion for Spokane. My background real quickly, grew up in Spokane, went to the U of W. I've kind of had four careers. I was a CPA. I was an investment banker, I was a venture capitalist, and more recently, an entrepreneur and co-founding eTails, and really actively involved in funding and guiding young companies here in the Spokane region.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one person in this community that I point to as sort of the grandfather of entrepreneurship and beating the drum, it's Tom Simpson. So I'm thrilled. I was just thinking, I can't believe we've been doing these podcasts now for about a year and a half, and this is the first time I've had you on the show to talk about funding. And I think there's a lot of people in our community recognize that we have a strong landscape for funding, but there are also people that still live in this belief that there's not money in Spokane. So do you want to talk a little bit just kind of in general about what funding looks like here in Spokane for
I actually think we have a very good funding resource here in Spokane. People oftentimes say there's not enough capital. Frankly, I think the world's almost awash in capital. Rarely, almost never, have I ever seen a good idea that didn't get funded. Now, where there is, if there is a void, it's for the very, very early stage companies, where it's one or two people with an idea but really nothing else. Maybe they don't have a track record as an entrepreneur, they don't have a product yet, so it's really on the come. And that's where it's hard to raise capital. But as you know, I put together a couple of angel funds, and likely there'll be more in the future that really address that segment, that first shot of capital to give a young entrepreneur or a team what they need to get started and develop a track record.
Yeah, and so those funds, I think you've aptly named them Kickstart 1 and Kickstart 2.
Correct.
They have really been, these are funds, separate LLCs that you formed yourself, Tom, but they've actually been very helpful when we kind of look at the Spokane Angel Alliance, which again, you're the president of the Spokane Angel Alliance, which is a networking group of accredited investors. Let's talk about kind of what that group is and how that group operates kind of in and around these two funds that you have created.
Okay. The Spokane Angel Alliance is a member-only group, have about 100 members, get together 6 times a year for a lunch. And at each lunch, I try to bring in 2 or 3 companies from the region that are seeking capital. And, probably over the last 5 or 7 years-ish, that group has funded about 30 companies. Members have put in 6 or 7 million into those companies. Those companies have gone on to raise an incredible amount of capital, upwards of $90 million from venture funds from around the country. And if I look at the employees that these companies have hired since funding, it exceeds 1,000. So it's worked well. And really the point of the angel funds that I put together, the Kickstart 1 and the Kickstart 2, is really to kind of kickstart the funding process of those companies that go through the Spokane Angel Alliance. If a company is looking to raise, let's say $250,000, and it fits my criteria, I can stand up and say, I'm in for $50,000. And that kind of helps shake loose other investors and form a syndicate to get the company funded.
Yeah, so we've had an angel investment group in the Spokane region actually for years. And I will say, because I was part of it in the early days, that back then people would show up for lunch and no one was writing checks. And it wasn't until Tom Simpson came in and said, okay, I want to lead this group. I can drive membership, which you've done a fabulous job of. But I think that these funds, the Kickstart 1 and 2, have really become catalysts and have become catalytic in terms of getting other people to say, yes, I'm in on this as well, right?
Yep. Well, when you're raising capital, if you're out looking to raise, let's say $250,000, getting that first commitment from a legitimate investor is really the most important thing, because that adds credibility to your deal and gets others to take a close look at it. And that's the purpose of the Kickstart funds, to kickstart the syndicate process of raising capital for an emerging company.
Yeah. So Tom, let's kind of steer it toward the entrepreneur, right? The person that has the idea. What's the process look like for them? How do they find, how do they connect with you? How do they get counseled or coached up so that, so they're ready to make a pitch? Do you have some advice for these people?
Advice. First of all, it's a small town here. And, any entrepreneur that really has a high degree of moxie, I'll call it the it factor, they're constantly going to be having to be tenacious about finding opportunities to develop their product and sell it. And that relates to capital formation too. I'm not too hard to find. You're not too hard to find, Steve. So if someone's looking for capital, they should be able to find me. And I try to be very open. If anybody reaches out to me, I try to provide a thoughtful response. I can't meet everybody, but if I can look at their business plan, I always, and even if I don't invest, I'll try to provide some constructive feedback. So really the starting point is kind of reaching out to those in the community that can be helpful to them. I mean, you're doing a great job. Startup Spokane, there's the Ignite curriculum. There's all sorts of resources out there to help begin to guide and mentor a young entrepreneur or team or first-time entrepreneur to develop their plan and find access to capital.
Yeah, thanks. And I think, not to belabor it, but I think startupspokane.com and Startup Spokane Central is a really great entry point for anyone, regardless of the stage that they're in, to come there first and let us help vet, provide them access to a mentor, a coach, and at the appropriate time, we would then make an introduction to you. Because, I mean, just like you said, I mean, you don't have capacity to coach all of them, but the ones you have coached have turned out to be pretty successful, and we're excited. We'll come back here in a few minutes and talk about that a little more. What types of ideas or businesses would the Angel Alliance most typically invest in?
That's a question I get all the time. What are you looking for? And I really boil it down to three things: people, ideas, and market. Creative, tenacious, passionate people, ideas that are unique or different in some regards, markets that appear that will accept this product or service, and markets that will pay for the product or service in a way that the company can make money. It's really that simple. I'm not smart enough to really predict what's going to be the next big trend, but everything boils down to people, ideas, and markets. And I won't get involved in companies that are involved in businesses that might have a degree of illicitness to them. Mm-hmm. But I'm open-minded to most industries and sectors.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that's really good for our listeners to know that it's not just a specific niche that that they've got to be in order to get access to capital. So that's great. And on the outside, on the back end of raising money, exits. we've had a couple exits in Spokane.
We have. Just recently, we've had a couple. There's Demand Energy Networks, which is a company that was funded in part by members of the Spokane Angel Alliance and my angel funds. Of course, we had eTails late last year, a company I actually co-founded, but there were a number of people in Spokane that benefited from that exit through a couple of my angel funds. And then also, in terms of not necessarily exits, but follow-on financings. Stay Alfred here of Spokane, a company that I'm involved with and have been mentoring, recently raised $15 million from a family office in Seattle. So there's a lot of momentum, a lot of things going on.
Yeah, I certainly feel it, and I know you do as well. And I'm excited to come back and share some more time with Tom Simpson here after our short break on Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Online.
In touch, online all the time. SpokaneTalksOnline.com.
What is that you're holding? The Spokesman Review? Is it really even a factor in driving customer traffic anymore?
Yeah, sure is. Here, close your eyes and imagine a few people with $5 bills in their hands standing outside the door of your business.
Okay, I see them. I like it. People with money. What's your point? $5 isn't that much.
I know, but what if there were 300,000 people in front of your door with $5 bills in their hands?
Well, now you got my attention. That's $1.5 million. 300,000 people. Where'd they come from?
Yeah, that's how many different people read the Spokesman Review every week in print, online, or on their mobile.
Wow, that's impressive.
All you got to do is invite them in. Run some ads.
The Spokesman Review has 300,000 readers a week? That's amazing. I had no idea.
Most people don't. That's why we're running this ad. In print and online, the Spokesman Review delivers customers for your business.
A special thank you to our friends at Tom Sawyer Country Coffee, the official coffee supplier here at Spokane Talks Online. Home. That word means so much more than its 4 letters suggest. R. That letter stands alone. When you see someone wearing a blue block R, you're talking with a realtor. Your local neighborhood realtor can help you find your first home, your next home, or help you sell the one you have. Next time you think home, think realtor. The brand makes the difference. This message brought to you by the members of the Spokane Association of Realtors.
Welcome back to Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Online, where I'm having the great privilege of being with my friend and coworker Tom Simpson.
Just don't call me a grandfather anymore, Steve.
Did I call you the grandfather of entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
You're not that old. You're only 45, I think, right? So anyway, let's pick up where we left off. We spent a little bit of time, Tom, talking about the angel investment group and capital, but I think ancillary to that is we have people coming in to Startup Spokane. In fact, we had like 130 meetings with people that were either in the idea stage or had already formed a business. And it's really challenging to know when they're ready, either to be presented to you for funding or even ready for a mentor. So could you take a couple of minutes? Just would love to hear your thoughts on, where should a company be in their life cycle for someone to, a mentor to go spend countless hours volunteering their time. Do you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a pretty subjective question. Again, I don't really object. I will strive to respond or meet with most people that reach out to me, that do it in a respectful manner. They're respectful of my time, and they've really have thought thoroughly about their idea. They're well prepared. They've done their research. And I'm happy to get involved then. Sometimes people will reach out to me where it's really just a gray, generic idea. They really haven't thought about their market, their business model, their competition, their product, and they're really looking to me to help define that. And that's less optimal to me. I'd prefer when they come to me and they think they have that wired, and then I can challenge them on it. But
Yeah. Do you expect them to come in with a business plan? I mean, we've kind of evolved away from the business plan. So talk about what they need to come prepared with.
You're right. Business plans are the thing of the past, and I don't think, anybody really has the ability to sit down and read a traditional 20 or 40-page business plan. I really think that an entrepreneur or a team that really has incredible clarity on what they're doing can distill it down into 1 or 2 pages.
Yeah.
And just, very objective, specific ideas and thoughts about what they're striving to do.
The elevator pitch, very succinct as well. Yep. So do you expect, as a funder or an investor, Tom, that these individuals they've put skin in the game in terms of their own money? I mean, are there any criteria that you have about money from friends and family or themselves when they come to, say, the SAA or to you for an investment?
Skin in the game is all relative to how much skin they have to put in the game. It is great to see, not great to see, but it's an indication of their all-inness to the extent that they have made some sacrifice for what they're doing. Right. Perhaps they're devoting all their evenings and weekends working on it while they're keeping their day job. So perhaps they've taken a second mortgage on their house. So, it doesn't necessarily need to be capital, but it needs to show that they have, or ideally, that they have really gone the extra mile to sacrifice something because they believe in what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So sweat equity is okay too, right? And a question I get all the time is, if I'm going to go raise money, how much of my company do I have to give up?
Yep.
So, and again, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, and there's no magic answer to this, but, for people that are, they've got a great idea. Some of them have the business wherewithal to take it to the next level. I want to talk to you about those that don't in a minute, but when they need to raise money, they're not sure what it is they have to give up to do that.
The first thing in raising money is how much money you need to raise. And I tell everyone, raise enough capital to at least get you through 18 months with cushion. So that's a starting point. How much are you going to raise? And the minimum amount is, again, this 18th month milestone. Then I might add a little bit more and express how much you're going to raise in a range. I'm going to raise X to Y, with X being the lowest amount to get you through 18 months. And then in terms of how much of your company you give up, if you're a first-time entrepreneur that has not done this before, the worst mistake you can do is put an excessive valuation on it. Because really, if you're a first-time entrepreneur, you just want to illustrate that you can get funded and be successful. And if you are successful, you're going to be nicely rewarded almost regardless of the valuation.
So do they have to come in knowing what their valuation is, Tom, or is that something that you can assist? If there's something that you think is compelling and they haven't really thought about, what is the value? Is that something that you and others in the ecosystem
I would recommend, if I were a first-time entrepreneur and I were meeting with myself, I'd go in and say, I'm looking to raise X to Y at this valuation. And this valuation would be an amount that is just clearly fair. It's not just low, it's not high, it's one that any sophisticated investor would look at and say, okay, get it. That's a fair valuation. I'm going to take that topic off the table right now. And I believe that's really important for a first-time entrepreneur, because if you have a fair valuation, you'll likely get your transaction done quickly. Right. I see a lot of companies who come in with a high valuation. Somehow they've talked to their next door neighbor or some professional or someone in Silicon Valley and thrown out an incredibly high number. And unfortunately, many of those companies are still raising money 6, 9, and 12 months later. What you really want to do is leverage the momentum with a fair valuation, and you'll get your transaction done quickly, assuming you have a reasonable idea, market, and team.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to go to next, Tom, and that is it has to be more than blue sky ideas, right? I mean, optimally, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, if they had a customer, right, or if they had some kind of revenue, some kind of traction, all of that helps. Do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, all of that helps. I mean, you can look at a lot of different, data points, the strength of the team, a customer, a prototype, a partnership. The more that you have those things, the higher the valuation. Right. But I've invested in companies that really didn't have a lot of those things, and there's just kind of a typical valuation range for those ideas for companies based in this region, and you have to be within that range if you want to get the credible view of an investor.
Right. So let me give you a different scenario, and that is the person that is a great technically, they've got a great idea. Maybe it's an inventor, but they don't have the business wherewithal to lead it, and they're looking for someone to take their idea and go be the CEO or manage that business. What do we do with people like that?
That's a very difficult dilemma. Because I get that all the time. Hey, Tom, I've got this great idea. I've come up with this. Maybe I have a patent, but I don't know how to run it. Can you find somebody? And I don't know if I've ever successfully been able to do that. I would suggest if you are that person with, some really whiz-bang new technology, but without the skills to run it, to first go to your network and see if you can find a co-founder to help you take the business to the next level before you go to investors.
Okay, so we're putting that back on them to go do that. Although in one of your organizations, Toolbox, you and Andy Barrett created an LLC. These are product-based ideas. I remember a couple of examples where you had actually paired an idea up with a CEO. Is that true? Or?
We've done that, probably not in the most elegant way of just taking a raw idea and going out and soliciting somebody to run it. In those cases, it kind of happens simultaneously. There was an idea and we found a person. Probably the best example is a Toolbox idea, a company called Sportscope Video. I won't go into their product line right now, but Andy came up with the idea and simultaneously found a bright young man, Derek Taylor, to run it, and that company has flourished and prospered.
But really, what I think I'm hearing you say is if someone has an idea or a technology, it's really incumbent on them to go try to find, surround themselves with people that have the expertise to run it. And again, I would say that to the extent that Startup Spokane can be of assistance, I mean, we are a network-based initiative and program. And so we do have a lot of partners and stakeholders, hundreds of people that we have met with, and some of them may be in a position to help in that regard. So that's great. I think what we ought to do in the last few minutes that we have is talk a little bit about the Northwest Entrepreneur Competition. And I want to just for our listeners, make them aware that it's open right now for submittals through February 27th at nwentrep.com. They're basically looking for an executive summary and a pitch video. And on the 27th of February, the first round of judging will occur. There are $50,000 worth of cash and in-kind awards. And this is a competition that's been going on, gosh, I think since 2000, 2001. And some really remarkable businesses have come from it, including one that we're featuring next week during our Entrepreneur Connect on February 16th. At Startup Spokane, we're going to be featuring Photobox, which are two young graduates from Whitworth who won the business plan competition 3 years ago. But Tom, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about Safeguard. They were a company that won last year from University of Idaho. Talk a little bit about that story.
Okay, and also eTails won back in 2008.
Yeah. How could I forget about eTails?
Yes, Safeguard won last year. 3 young individuals from University of Idaho with a fabulous idea. They won last year. In fact, they won a number of the regional business plan competitions. Since then, I've stayed in close contact with them. And just recently, members of the Spokane Angel Alliance closed a $300,000 financing for Safeguard. They've moved into the toolbox, and they are off to the races. So
yeah, what a great example of an idea coming from the university, some students, right? And by the way, the idea is a wearable technology that detects electric voltage,
high voltage. It can be worn by, for example, a lineman, and basically it sends off a series of alerts if an individual comes in close proximity with a high voltage current.
Yeah, and so they They have this idea at U of I. They enter business plan competitions. They win. They are moving into the toolbox because it's a manufacturing-oriented, product-oriented incubator that you and Andy Barrett run, and they presented at the Spokane Angel Alliance. You invested through one of the Kickstart funds, I believe, and have follow-on investment forthcoming from other organizations, including
they were oversubscribed. They were looking to raise $200,000, and we closed on $300,000.
Yeah, and so what, with a group of these three young men, what will help ensure their success?
Fortunately, they've been surrounded by really a good team of advisors that are helping them. Vista, who is part of my due diligence, reviewed their product. They saw the merits of it. They saw the market opportunity. And again, your company, Vista, has offered to be very helpful to them in finalizing the development of the market, of the product, and getting it on the market.
Yeah, and I would say in a lot of investments, many of the angel investors, they take a hands-on approach with the investments they make. And so a lot of these companies are able to benefit from the expertise that these investors who are also successful entrepreneurs and mentors like yourself, Tom, can provide. So what a great...
But we got a great teamwork here in the community. I mean, Steve, you're doing a great job, everybody on your team, and really, there is a great cohort of people here in town that are moving the ball forward in terms of entrepreneurship. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast today, and join us for future Broaden podcasts where we'll continue to bring you profiles of successful entrepreneurs as well as provide information on helpful resources and much more. We'll talk to you next time on Startup Spokane Radio on Spokane Talks Online.
Startup Spokane is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com and is a joint effort between GSI's Startup Spokane and Spokane Talks Online. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. We wish you a great and profitable day.
Snoring can disrupt marriages and cause serious health problems. Call Sleep Better Northwest first, the experts in dental sleep medicine. Their medically approved, custom-fit oral appliances will have both you and your partner sleeping better and being more productive throughout your day. Don't wait. Snoring and sleep apnea can signal potential strokes or heart attacks. For more information, visit needbettersleepnow.com and download our health guide today. Sleep Better Northwest, the experts in dental sleep medicine.